Good evening. My name is Shannon Carboni, and I'm the Public Information Officer for the Boulder County District Attorney's Office. Today, speaking will be sorry. Will be Boulder County District Attorney Michael Doherty. Last name is spelled D as in David, O-U-G, H as in Henry, E-R, T as in Thomas, Y. Then we'll also have Boulder Police Department Chief Stephen Redfern. Last name is spelled R-E, D as in David, F as in Frank, E-A-R-N as in Nancy. Then we'll have several victim family members speak. First will be Bob Olds. Last name is spelled O-L-D-S. Next will be Kirsten Brooks. Last name is spelled B-R-O-O-K-S. We'll have Kirsten, K-I-R-S-T-E-N. I-N, sorry, thank you. Thank you. Then we'll have Denise Daniel. Last name is spelled D as in David, A-N as in Nancy, E-L. Then we'll have Olivia McKenzie. Last name is spelled M as in Mary, A-C-K-E-N as in Nancy, Z-I-E. And then Erica Mahoney. Last name is spelled M as in Mary, A, H as in Henry, O, N as in Nancy, E, Y. And then we'll take a few questions after.
Good afternoon. So I'll make a brief statement and then turn it over to Chief Redfern and then take questions at the end if you have any questions. Today marks the end of an incredibly long and painful journey for the victims of the massacre at King Soopers on March 22nd, 2021. It has been a difficult journey, especially for the victims and their family members, but also for this community because of what happened and how many people were so deeply impacted by what the defendant chose to do on March 22nd. And make no mistake about it, folks, he was planning it since the very beginning of January 2021. He was deliberate, intentional, and brutal in what he did to the people at King Soopers. They were all random victims, completely innocent. And from getting to know the victim families over the years, I can tell you that they were very special people. And this community lost 10 lights when the defendant chose to kill as many people as he could at King Soopers. But these families are also remarkable in their strength, their resilience, and their love for one another and for those that they've lost. So today marks justice in the criminal case, but I also recognize, as you do, that nothing will repair the harm, the damage, and the trauma that the defendant inflicted upon them. So today we ask for, and he has now received the maximum sentence allowed under law, which is 10 consecutive life terms, one for each of the victims that he murdered. And then maximum sentences on each one of the attempted murder counts. That maximum sentence is 48 years, with each one running consecutive. For attempted murder victims, where they're charged with two different theories of attempted murder, those counts will merge under the law, so that's why the total number is different than what you may have been calculating in the back of the courtroom. The assault count carries a maximum sentence of 32 years. The judge imposed the maximum sentence on that count, which again runs consecutive to the others. And then on the large capacity magazine counts, of which there were 6 he was convicted of, the court imposed 1 year for each of those to run consecutive. So the total by my count is 10 sentences of life without the possibility of parole, each running consecutive to one another, and then another 1,334 years in state prison consecutive on top of that. I think more than anything, what matters today is that justice has finally been done in this case. And it's just on the criminal case. The victims will forever carry with them the loss. But today we bring what has been a really painful chapter in the criminal court to an end, to its rightful end. I am really grateful to the jury. This is a hard case to sit in court for every day. Some of the people in the courtroom we hear because they're victims. Their family members were killed, or they themselves were almost murdered. Some of the people in there were doing their jobs, like all of you, which I really respect, truthfully, and I appreciate. And then you have the jurors who are chosen from random, and they come down, and they sit, and they listen, and they watch, and they have to listen to all the evidence and watch that brutal video of what the defendant did, and ultimately work together to reach a unanimous verdict based on the evidence, which was justice, in finding the defendant guilty of all 55 counts. I am really grateful to the Boulder Police Department, to Chief Redfern, who's an outstanding partner and ally in law enforcement, but also all the outstanding women and men in Boulder PD and the law enforcement agencies that responded. That list is too long for me to remember. But there were so many agencies that responded on March 22nd and then never stopped working this. That night at Boulder Police Department, I stood in front of 130 law enforcement officers and investigators, and we talked about this day happening. We talked about what is it going to mean to do our jobs the very best we could to have justice done for the victims. It's been a tremendous team effort. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the victim advocates from the District Attorney's Office, but also the Boulder Police Department, Boulder Strong, and other agencies. We've had a victim advocate assigned to every family since day one. And for some of those victim advocates, when this process started, they had no idea that day one would be the beginning of a 3.5-year journey with these families. And they've never left their side. We're here today because the victim advocates did so much to support the victim families through what has been a grueling process. And I'm really grateful to them and all the women and men in the DA's office and the other agencies that came together to help with this effort. I'm going to turn it over to the Chief Redfern, and then I'm happy to take any questions you have after everybody gets done. Thank you.
Good evening. As Michael said, my name is Stephen Redfern, and I have the honor of being the Boulder Police Chief. I'm humbled to be here today to say a few words on behalf of the Boulder Police Department and as well as the City of Boulder. As we reflect today on the closing of an incredibly important chapter of the 2021 mass shooting, many reflections and emotions come to mind. On March 22nd, 2021 at 2:30 p.m., a 911 call came into our dispatch center that would change so many lives. The call reporting a shooting at the Table Mesa King Soopers was immediately aired to officers, some of whom stand behind me today. As you've heard throughout this trial, our officers did exactly as they are trained to do. They drove as fast as they could to get there, and then when they got there, they ran into that store towards gunfire while everyone else was running out. We've heard a few stories during this trial of our officers disregarding their own safety and lives to stop a gunman who now has been held accountable. Some of these officers had decades of service, and some were on the job for less than a week. Those officers are mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, coaches and mentors. They all knew that that day they could have just as easily been a shopper rather than one of the first responders. Our officers and officers from other responding agencies entered that store without hesitation because they knew what they had to do. They had trained extensively for calls just like this, hoping it would never come across the radio airwaves. During this trial, you also heard about the distinguished heroism of the officers who continued to push into the store while taking rifle fire, and ultimately the officer who ended the gunman's rampage. It is a miracle that we did not lose more officers that day. We owe all of those who responded that day and who have worked tirelessly since, the days, months, and years after, a great debt of gratitude. I can assure you that without hesitation, our officers would make the same decision today to ensure people intent on harming our community will not triumph. Tragically, one officer paid the ultimate sacrifice that day while protecting his community. Officer Eric Talley, radio call sign 295, ran directly into that store without hesitation to confront evil. Eric's final act of selflessness and bravery on behalf of his beloved community. 9 of our community members could not be saved that day, but from the moment Eric and his fellow officers entered that store, no more loss of life occurred. This is the definition of selflessness and heroism, and its impact cannot be understated. Many of Officer Talley's friends and family have been present throughout the trial and are here with us today. To all of you, I want to thank you for your perseverance, strength, and resilience, as it is an inspiration to all of us. I also want to thank you for sharing Eric with the community and for sharing Eric with BPD. Eric's life and sacrifice will live on forever. All of you are a part of our BPD family, but also our City of Boulder family, and we are forever indebted to you. Officer Eric Talley was one of 10 people whose lives were so tragically taken that day, and I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge and honor the families of all of the amazing people who lost their lives that day. We will always have a pit in our stomachs knowing that those incredible women and men are no longer with us in this world, and we grieve the loss of your loved ones with you. The greatest way to honor those we've lost is to never forget their lives and to carry on their legacy with courage and integrity. The Boulder Police Department will continue to work tirelessly to do everything we can to prevent such a tragedy from ever occurring again. We lost such incredible men and women that day, and we will work tirelessly to do everything we can to prevent harm like this in the future. As I close, I want to end by sharing my sincere gratitude for everyone who got us to this point today. This trial was no easy feat. And as I shared with our district attorney, my friend Michael Doherty, on the first day of this trial when opening statements occurred, there could have been no better district attorney's office and men and women prosecuting this case. I knew we were in good hands. As Michael said, there were so many others who helped us in this case to come to fruition, and we have a great deal of gratitude to everyone. To our partner agencies who answered our call for help that day, some taking fire and receiving injuries, we are indebted to you. And to our federal partners who helped us work through a large and complicated crime scene and investigation, thank you. We rely heavily on our partnerships, and so many agencies got to Boulder as fast as they could that day and stood alongside of our officers amidst the chaos. We hope to never have to return the favor, but please know our city is eternally grateful for all our partnerships throughout the region. I would also be remiss if I did not thank my colleagues at the City of Boulder, as well as our elected officials who have stood by BPD from the moment this tragedy occurred and have continued to support our work and work with us as this case progressed through the legal system. Lastly, I want to thank our community. The community has shown our employees so much love in the aftermath of this tragedy and throughout this trial. The best way we can show the world that we will not be intimidated by cowards focused on harming our community is to come together, to persevere, and come out stronger and more united while never forgetting those we lost. We must remember that we share far more in common than we share differences, and I would ask that we remember everyone who has been touched by this tragedy and how much we have come together in its aftermath. In my experience, closure is not easily attained in situations like this, but I hope that today's verdict provides everyone with some peace now that this important part of our journey comes to a close. Thank you.
So I know most of you, or have talked with a lot of you in these last 3.5 years, and I want to thank you as well for sharing Ricky Old's life with everyone and making the victims of this brutal murder, mass shooting, bringing them and keeping them in the forefront instead of the murderer. Okay? I'm here today to give my thanks to this amazing prosecution team of Mr. Doherty, Mr. Kuffner, and Adam when he was here, and everybody else in his office. They have worked tirelessly and so thoroughly on this case that any jury that was before them with the case that they presented would have had the same outcome, the same verdict because of them. Also, I would like to thank the victim advocates. They truly are the ones that were there for us, from day one, through this entire 3 years, 6 months, and 1 day. Okay? They deserve everybody's utmost gratitude and appreciation, and I have nothing but love for all of them in my hearts. When you can walk into a room and you get a hug and you get that little piece of reassurance that everything's going to be okay. As this chapter closes, it doesn't bring back any of our loved ones. But with this verdict, it ensures that this murderer will pay for his crimes and his heinous, brutal murders for the rest of his life. And I can talk to you individually later if you have questions. Thank you.
My name is Kirsten Brooks. I'm Eric Talley's little sister and his only sister. And I'm here today also to thank the Boulder Police Department, every officer that responded to that shooting, to the respect of the press, to the respect of you all who have watched us struggle and not hampered us or bothered us. That's rare. I don't know if that's just Boulder. I want to thank the prosecution because, my God, they fired that straight. And my brother was not shopping at King Soopers that day. He was working. And when he flew into that store, and he went in there for 2 reasons. I've known him my whole life. He went in there to protect people, and he went in there to fire a bullet into that killer's head. And the trajectory of that bullet is finished today in the justice of what these people have done. And I am so thankful for that, because my family and I and Eric's 7 children can sleep at night knowing that the nightmare, the monster, is going to be put away. And I am so grateful and thankful in my heart, and that is mixed with grief and loss that my brother's not standing here today telling me to shut up. I miss him. I miss his laugh, and I wish you'd all known him. Thank you.
I will never say his name. He took Jody from us. Why? Lots of names and diagnoses have been thrown around, but to me, there's only one way I can understand this. This gentleman was bullied and dark and depressed, and no support from his family. If he was so sick, as they say, why did they not get him help? Take the guns and render this preventable. Jody was shot once in the back and crawled under a register to lie in wait to get shot 3 more times, fatally to the head. That is a hate crime. Her daughters Alex and Channing are so distraught and crushed they could not speak, so I will speak for them. So sorry. I can't get this. This is Alex comforting me, if you can believe that, after losing her mother. I hope you can shut the door to this, because this is excruciating. No one should have to sit in a court across from a murderer of someone you love and have to listen to the stories. The brain and the heart isn't built for this. But like I said before, you are in that room because you love her so, and that's something. That means a lot to us. She deserves that. Sorry. I got the mom I always knew was there, and man, was she 100%. I hold on to those years. I tried to think like her, react like her, love like her. She had so much life, especially because the first 60 years were tough, but I finally felt like she was moving on. She was supposed to live. She should be hiking with her dogs, playing with her grandchildren. Meeting new people, finding someone who loves her, seeing my sister do the things my mom always wanted her to do. The list goes on. We will miss her every second of every day. And we thank everyone who has helped, the prosecution, Boulder Police, the SWAT team. So to Alex and Channing and Everett and Emmy and Chuck and Corey, I speak for them to say, this shouldn't have happened. Thank you.
My name is Olivia McKenzie. I am the daughter of Lynn Murray. She was shopping for Instacart that day, something I told her she might like to do to make money in the pandemic. And we did our first Instacart shopping at Sprouts off Arapahoe. And that was actually the store that I would be leaving to get the call that my father would pass away a year later from a heart attack, I believe because of this event. There is no words. I mean, everybody said this today. There's no words to describe the pain of an event like this. Nobody should have to go through this. And I just hope that the sentencing that he received today nudges in the direction to lessen, rephrase. I just hope that other potential mass shooters that have the desire to do this understand there's a consequence. And that I don't feel insanity as a cop-out should be an option. My mom was an incredible woman and she should still be here. And on that day, I shouldn't have had to wait for hours the way that we waited. I shouldn't have had to walk through a grocery store a couple weeks later to see where she died. And we shouldn't have had to go through this trial to relearn all of the horrific details. Life is not the same. Going to the grocery store is not the same because of this. But with that being said, I'm incredibly grateful to the district attorney's office for all of their hard work and getting the verdict we really hoped for. And I'm just very grateful. And I'm very grateful to the community and for everybody that's helped lift us up in the past 3 years to get through this, because navigating the trauma and the pain of an event like this is, nobody has a guidebook. We all understand grief, hopefully, maybe, well, not hopefully, but to some capacity, you know, if you've lost somebody, you understand. But to try to understand how this can happen to somebody you love, and try to live, you know, your life going to the grocery store every day is something that we do every day. And no, it's not something that, you know, we can do so easily. So this has impacted our lives. This has impacted my life. This has impacted my brother's life, and it has taken, I believe, my father's life. I now have no parents because of this. So I'm very grateful for the justice that's been served today, and thank you to everybody for helping us get here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Erica Mahoney, and I'm Kevin Mahoney's daughter. I grew up in Boulder, less than 5 minutes away from King Soopers. Boulder is so beautiful. But on March 22nd, 2021, darkness crept in. I never expected that my dad would have to run for his life in the parking lot of a grocery store. Over the past 3.5 years, I've been searching for the light, and I have found it in unforeseeable ways. All these people behind me are light, and my dad is light, and the 9 others who lost their lives that day continue to emanate their light. I was 6 months pregnant when my dad was killed. Today, I am a mom of 2 beautiful children. If there's one thing I want for my children and for all of the children in this country, it's that they don't have to grow up with the constant fear of mass shootings. We have to figure out a way to make them stop. I believe hope is on the horizon. I feel hopeful, and all these people behind me are proof of that hope. Thank you.
DA Doherty and Chief Redfern will take a few questions before we conclude. Any questions? Oh, did you want to speak? Oh, okay. Do you want to? Yep. Shay Talley. Do you want to spell your last name for them?
Talley. I just wanted the public to know who Officer Eric Talley was. He was my son, but he was much more than that. But just to give you an idea, about 6 months before he died, he gave me a phone call. We called, I live 800 miles away, so we didn't get call enough, but he called me, and just out of the blue, he started talking and apologizing about what he had, something he had done in the past, and I said, Eric, don't worry about it. You're my son. I forgive you. But he kept on and kept on, and finally I cut to the chase. I said, what's going on, Eric? He says, I just wanted to tell you that I'm proud to call you father. There's no greater compliment that a father could have than that. And I just wanted you to know that. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay.
Do you have any questions, Colleen?
I know you haven't seen the motion for time served, credit for time served yet. Has that been discussed at all? Do we know how much time has been served?
So at the sentencing hearing today, Judge Bakke asked if we had seen the motion filed by the defense regarding time served, credit for time served. Generally speaking, anytime someone's being sentenced to state prison, the defense can file a motion asking that the time that they've been in custody up to this point count towards their ultimate time served. We haven't seen the motion. We'll take a look at it. If we agree that the number's accurate, we'll let the court know. If we disagree, there'll be a hearing about what the number has to be. Colleen?
What was the video the jurors wanted to see this morning, and how did it affect
What was the last part?
and how do you think it may have affected their decision?
So there were 3 videos that the jurors asked to see. They sent out notes at the very end of the day, Friday, which were then taken up this morning. One of those videos was the February 20th, 2024 interview of the defendant by Doctors Gray and Torres. As you will recall, those 2 doctors work on behalf of the state hospital. They interviewed the defendant on 4 separate occasions, including that one on February 20th, 2024. They ultimately determined the defendant was sane. The jurors asked to watch that one particular video, which is about an hour and 20 minutes long. They also asked to watch body-worn camera video from Commander Bonafide, who is one of the leaders of the SWAT team that went into King Soopers and placed the defendant under arrest. I think that video is very helpful for the jurors to look at, because in that video, the defendant is ordered to move in certain directions to comply with law enforcement and surrender. There's no hesitation, there's no confusion, there's no question, and there's certainly no hallucination or delusion. He's following every single direction by Commander Bonafide and the others with Commander Bonafide. And finally, the third video the jurors asked to see was the 8-minute compilation video that the FBI helped us put together, which captures tragically the defendant murdering each of the 10 individuals and how intentional and brutal he was in those actions. And the jurors asked to watch that and watch that this morning before returning guilty verdicts on all the charges.
Do you think there's a reason he went to that store on that day?
So the question is, do I think there's a reason he went to that store on that day? What I will say is I don't know the exact answer. But what I do know is he was planning to carry out a mass shooting. He was researching mass shootings. He was looking at El Paso Walmart mass shooting in Texas. He was looking at the Christchurch mass shootings in New Zealand. He was definitely going to carry out a mass shooting. And then he started to focus on Boulder. And in the weeks and days leading up to his attack on that King Soopers, that focus on Boulder intensified. He downloaded a photo of Boulder from March 18th, 2021, so just 4 days before the shooting. He also, on his phone, there were different locations being recorded. So, importantly, on March 21st, the day before, locations such as Safeway, Target, Petco, different places in Boulder that would have a large crowd, he had started to look at on his phone. He came in on Highway 93, and I would speculate that the first large public shopping center he hit was that King Soopers. And he drove past it once, drove into the neighborhood behind it, and then returned to carry out what I think of as the ultimate act of cowardice in killing people at a King Soopers supermarket. So I can't tell you exactly why that King Soopers, but I can tell you he was certainly targeting a mass shooting where people, the general public, would gather, and then specifically locations in Boulder. Carol?
Can you reveal anything the jurors said in their exit interviews with you about how they came to their decision?
So the question is, can I reveal anything that the jurors said to me? And no, because I actually did not speak with the jurors. Because the way the timing broke out today, since we wanted to go to immediate sentencing, the judge stepped in the back and spoke with the jurors, and then we went to sentencing right after that, so I did not have a chance or opportunity to talk to the jurors. Yes?
When James Graham was on the stand, he wanted to ask him about the phone call that he received. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So I'm glad you asked about that, actually. So James Graham was a victim of attempted murder. He was at the store, as you may recall, getting ramen noodles. He was on break, lunch break. And then shots rang out, and James ran as fast as he possibly could. He actually pulled one of his muscles in his legs trying to escape from King Soopers. And originally he thought the muscle pull was a gunshot ripping through the back of his leg. Later on, when he tried to get his car back from the parking lot, it had been secured by Boulder PD and other law enforcement, he agreed to do a media interview. Of course, as you all know, many of you were there that day. One of the reporters came up and asked him to go on camera, and he did. And he just talked about what he had seen. A relative of Ricky Olds was watching TV and knew James. And it kind of speaks to the small world that we have in Boulder community. That she reached out to James then to say, did you see Ricky in the store? Can you try to find Ricky? And her body was laying inside, and she had been brutally killed by that point. But that's what that was about with James Graham.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions at all? What I will say as we wrap up, I've never once said the defendant's name. I actually think if I live long enough, I'll forget his name, to be honest. But I'll never forget this case, and I will always feel honored to have been a part of this effort to fight for justice for these victims and all their families. So I would ask, as you write your stories and as we think about them and as we all remember what happened on March 22nd, that we lift up and honor the victims. Nevin Stanisic, Kevin Mahoney, Trelona Bakoviak, Ricky Olds, Denny Stong, Lynn Murray, Terry Leiker, Jody Waters, Suzanne Fountain, and Eric Talley. So today, 3.5 years later, we have justice. But let's always remember them, most of all, and what our community lost on that day. Thank you for being here today.
And that'll conclude the press conference. Thank you. Julie right now. Shannon, if you want to do it later, we can do it next year. CBS.
Just make sure to get your notes. Yes, I don't want to miss places. Just get your
Sure, I've got those as well. Yeah, either way.
yeah. So Olivia.